Dear ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you at the University of Economics in Bratislava. I am very pleased we meet here today on the occasion of this workshop. Thank you very much for your accepted our invitation, and I wish you a good time.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, the idea to organize the Bratislava Open Lecture series originated when three colleagues of mine from the virtual scientific laboratories, Urban Kovac, Michal Radusa, and Radovan Barovic, and myself discussed with the rector of Economics University, Professor Rudolf Sivak, the idea of assisting students with getting familiar with the current trends in the area of economic and behavioral sciences. Perhaps a very obvious, but at the same time quite challenging solution was to set up a distinguished lecture series by inviting renowned scholars, such as our today's speaker, Professor Alibera, who would present frontier economic research to students and faculty. The idea came to life by the Economics University providing the venue, Tatra Banka Foundation lending its financial support to the series, and recently the US Embassy in Slovakia lending its name to individual lectures. For all that, we are very, very grateful.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be back in Bratislava. I was first here 20 years ago. My wife and I were driving from Budapest to Prague, and we stopped here for lunch. Lunch then was not quite as good as it is today. And as a consequence, we had rather liberal portions of wine relative to food. And on the way to Prague, I was stopped by a policeman. Right? It was quite clear that it was an American driving a car, and a non-trivial part of the foreign exchange of the then East European countries came from traffic. And I think it will involve South Africa before we're through, and it may also involve New Zealand. Now, each of these waves of crises has been preceded by a wave of bubbles. The rates of growth of indebtedness in that 1970 bubble were unsustainable. So I want to make a distinction between credit bubbles and asset bubbles. So all the bubbles that I spoke about were primarily credit bubbles that led to increases in asset prices. The uniqueness of the dot-com boom was that it was an asset bubble that was not fueled by credit. The banking system was just not affected. No bank failed when the stock prices began to fall very sharply. All the other bubbles that I was speaking about essentially were fueled by the banking system, by the rapid growth of credit, and when you may not have a very sharp decline in the prices of debt instruments. But what the Fed is essentially trying to do is to avoid essentially the collapse of the economy into the debt deflation trap.
Excellent, Professor Alibera. Well, thank you very much.